Today, we're taking a look at the Occupy Wall Street protests. And after the Tea Party movement gained momentum nationwide, some are saying that Occupy Wall Street will do the same. But can you really compare the two grassroots movements? Joining me again is our panel of experts. And we were just talking about politics, so why don't you can pick up your point where we left off.
Well, I think this Occupy Wall Street as well as the Tea Party both represent a resurgence of direct democracy and a frustration with our elected officials because they're not addressing the problems. Now, obviously, they have two very different kinds of solutions. The Tea Party wants less government. I think most people in Occupy Wall Street want more government. But they stem from the same frustration with this going to the ballot box once every 2 years, once every 4 years, going through the same routine, and nothing changes. And people are still suffering, people are still out of work. And that's what both movements have in common.
All right, so what do they do to sort of gain the type of staying power that the Tea Party seems to be having?
Well, being on Wall Street instead of in Washington is actually very smart of them, because it would just be yet another protest in Washington, a dime a dozen down in the Capitol. They are saying Wall Street is really Washington North, because this industry has benefited so much from too big to fail, from government subsidy, from all kinds of government subsidy for student loans to mortgages and so forth. So I think that's effective. As for, do they have a goal of getting representatives elected who share their philosophy, as the Tea Party did? 35% of them said they did in a poll, but in order to do that, in order not to scare politicians, they're going to have a much more disciplined message. So that's a decision that they have to make. It'll be very hard to get a mainstream politician to say that he or she unequivocally supports them if they're afraid that then the protesters are going to go out and call for something that most people don't agree with.
All right, you called it a movement that's clearly to the left. Is this the leftist version of the Tea Party?
Well, we'll have to see. With their branding, I think they're going to have a lot of problems. But, the Tea Party is very clearly for limited government and constitutional government and representation of government. And the election in 2010 showed a huge swing that way, historical election in the House of Representatives. I think it shows a model of what happens when you go to a rally, then you go back to work, and you get politically active. I think that has worked for the Tea Party movement. And, it's yet to be seen with the other group, Occupy Wall Street. But I think ultimately, therefore, redistribution of wealth. And I think that's where there's going to be a big political divide. Big government has got us into this problem. Big government has got us into crony capitalism. Goldman Sachs gave the most money to President Obama. So you really have to go back to, who's funding it as crony capitalism, not capitalism. And I think that's where they got the messaging wrong.
But interesting here, the demographic is pretty widespread down there. When you talk about redistribution of wealth that some may support, there are some middle and upper middle class folks over at Zuccotti Park as well. I mean, how do we kind of merge this crowd into one voice, really?
Well, and the reality is that everybody has lost something in this recession, which may end up being a double-dip recession. Everybody has struggled, wherever you are on the income spectrum. Certainly people who are doing badly before are doing worse now. And what, go back to sort of the electoral politics pieces of this, what they really need to match any of the Tea Party victories is a victory. The reality is that the President of the United States gets money from Wall Street, so will the Republican candidates. They're getting money from Wall Street as well. So that's not going to go away anytime soon. What if they want to be more Tea Party-esque, what they need to be doing is focusing on those one or two races that they think that they have some leverage and claim that victory. Once they do that, they can actually start to gain a bit of momentum. But we are on a fairly limited cycle right now. We don't have much time because the presidential primaries are coming up. So if they want to have that kind of success, they've got to put it into gear pretty quickly.
And Occupy Wall Street respects the Constitution also, namely the First Amendment, which says people have a right to peaceably assemble and speak their minds.
They're doing that with the anti-Semitic comments, too.
So what again are the New York City police doing, pepper spraying these people? That's a blatant violation of the First Amendment.
There have been some instigations as well. They've been provoking.
Who cares?
That's the sole.
But he was disciplined, though. He was disciplined.
It doesn't matter. He should have been fired. And frankly,
and how come none of this happens in the Tea Party?
I think there were plenty of outrageous things happening in the Tea Party things.
Find me an arrest.
Mainly because they were happening in places outside of New York City, where the police are generally better controlled than in New York City.
Two rallies in New York City.
Did you see what happened down there? Did you see the pepper spraying?
I saw activists rushing Wall Street. I saw activists rushing buildings.
They've been there for a month, and surprisingly, I mean, they pretty much, there seems to be not a stalemate, but some kind of understanding between the NYPD for the most part when they're at the park. I mean, they do seem to have, you know, an agreement that is adhered to by both sides.
One of the best things I've ever seen in my life was just a few days ago, Shamar Thomas, an ex-Marine, lecturing the NYPD, saying to them, you are supposed to protect Americans, not attack Americans. And I think the NYPD should take that to heart.
All right. Well, listen, next we're going to look ahead to the 2012 election. Will Occupy Wall Street influence the presidential election? When Good Day Street Talk continues. Stay tuned.